I never thought I'd be the guy laughing as my relationship crumbled, but that's exactly what happened. The sound caught me off guard. This strange, hollow chuckle escaping my lips as I watched 3 years of my life disintegrate in a single moment. It wasn't happiness, God no. It was the kind of laugh that comes when life reveals its cruelest joke, and you're the punchline. For 3 years, Olivia had been my everything, the woman I woke up beside, the one I planned vacations with. The future I had carefully mapped out in my head with the precision of an architect. We had a routine. Sunday brunches at Café Lucerne, where she always ordered the same thing: eggs Benedict with extra hollandaise and a mimosa. Movie nights where she'd curl against me, her jasmine perfume becoming as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. Weekend trips to the coast where we'd talk about the house we'd buy someday, the kids we might have. All those small, precious moments that build a life together. Then came that ordinary Thursday night when I borrowed her phone to order takeout because mine was dead. Nothing dramatic. Just a mundane decision that would shatter everything. The notification slid down from the top of her screen. "Ryan, last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." 7 words. 7 simple words that stopped my world. I remember staring at those words. The Thai food menu forgotten, as my brain frantically searched for an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a work colleague thanking her for help on a project. Maybe it was her cousin Ryan, whom I'd never met. But deep down, in that place where truth sits heavy and undeniable, I knew. My fingers hovered over the message. 1 tap, and I could read their entire conversation. 1 tap, and I could confirm what my gut was already screaming. But something stopped me. Maybe it was dignity. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe some part of me wanted to see how far this would go. How long she would maintain the lie. How deep her betrayal ran. I handed her phone back, ordered our usual pad thai for me, green curry for her, and watched her across our living room with new eyes. Had she always checked her phone this often? Had that smile, the one I thought was reserved for me, always contained this secretive edge? In the days that followed, I became a detective in my own relationship. I noticed everything. The way she angled her phone away from me when texting, her sudden work emergencies that pulled her away on Friday nights, how our intimacy had cooled from a steady flame to sporadic embers. Each observation was a knife twist, precise and painful. My friend Marcus saw the change in me. Over beers one night, the truth spilled out of me like blood from a wound. "You need to confront her," he said, eyes flashing with protective anger. "Tonight. Call her out and end it." I swirled my beer, watching the amber liquid form a tiny whirlpool. "Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet? What are you waiting for? More proof? More pain?" I couldn't explain it then. This strange need to understand the full scope of her betrayal before I acted. Maybe I needed to see the complete picture of what I was losing. Maybe I needed time to fortify myself against what was coming. Or maybe, just maybe, I was waiting for her to prove me wrong, to have some miraculous explanation that would restore my faith in us. So I waited, and I watched. I became an audience to my own life, observing from a distance as she crafted her elaborate deceptions. The late nights at the office that I now knew were spent elsewhere. The distracted kisses that felt like obligations rather than desire. The way her eyes would light up at her phone, a brightness that used to be reserved for me. Surprisingly, I became good at pretending nothing had changed. I maintained our routines, asked about her day, kissed her goodbye in the mornings. I became an actor in the play of our relationship, delivering my lines with convincing sincerity while my heart hardened beneath the performance. Her birthday approached, our 4th one together. In previous years, I'd planned weekend getaways, surprise parties, intimate dinners. This year would be different. This year, her birthday would be the final act of our story together. I planned it with meticulous care. Reserved a table at Eloise, the upscale French restaurant she'd been hinting about for months. Invited her closest friends, even flew in her parents from Chicago. Ordered her favorite champagne. Selected the perfect gift. Not the engagement ring I'd been saving for, but a delicate silver bracelet. Beautiful but impersonal. A parting gift. As the day approached, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pain was still there, a persistent ache beneath my ribs, but something else had emerged alongside it. A sense of clarity, of purpose. For weeks I'd been drifting, lost in the fog of her betrayal. Now I had direction. Now I knew exactly where I was headed. The morning of her birthday, I kissed her awake, whispered, "Happy birthday" against her skin, and told her I had a surprise planned for that evening. Her eyes lit with excitement. Genuine, I thought, until her phone buzzed and that other secretive smile crossed her lips as she checked the message. "Dress up tonight," I told her. "I want to make this special." She had no idea how special it would truly be. No idea that this birthday would be the one she'd remember forever. Not for the celebration, but for the moment everything fell apart. Because sometimes endings are more memorable than beginnings. And sometimes, when everything you thought was real proves false, the only response left is laughter. Looking back, the signs were there long before that text message. Little fractures in our perfect picture that I'd painted over with excuses and blind trust. It's amazing what we can convince ourselves of when we're afraid of the truth. 6 months earlier, Olivia had started a new marketing position at Watershed Creative. She'd come home that first week buzzing with enthusiasm about the company culture, the collaborative projects, the creative team. She mentioned Ryan in passing, the art director who'd shown her around, who'd made her feel welcome. I was happy for her, genuinely thrilled that she'd found a workplace where she felt valued. But then Ryan's name started appearing more frequently in her stories. Ryan thought her campaign idea was brilliant. Ryan invited her to join the company softball team. Ryan stayed late to help her finish a presentation. I ignored the prickle of unease these mentions stirred. After all, I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her completely. Then came the subtle changes. She started working out more intensely, buying new clothes that weren't quite her usual style. When I complimented a new blouse, she casually mentioned, "Ryan said this color brings out my eyes." I swallowed the comment that rose to my lips. Of course, other people would notice how beautiful she was. That was natural, right? Our Friday night tradition of homemade pizza and bad movies slowly gave way to work happy hours that stretched later and later. "Just networking," she'd say, kissing me quickly before disappearing into the shower. I'd catch whiffs of unfamiliar cologne mingled with the scent of wine and bar smoke when she finally slid into bed beside me, already pretending to be half asleep to avoid conversation. Then came the protective behaviors with her phone. Olivia had always been open. Her phone casually left on countertops, her laptop often open on our coffee table. Now her phone accompanied her everywhere, even to the bathroom. New passwords appeared on her devices. When I asked about it casually, she laughed it off. "Client confidentiality," she explained. "Some of the campaigns we're working on are under strict NDAs." I believed her. Or rather, I chose to believe her because the alternative was too painful to consider. The weekend trips we'd planned started getting canceled or postponed, always for reasonable causes. An emergency client meeting, a deadline moved up, a colleague who needed her expertise. I found myself spending more weekends alone, wandering through our apartment that suddenly felt too large, too empty. "You should talk to her," my sister Jen urged during one of our weekly calls. "Something's off, and you know it." "It's just a busy period at work," I defended, though my voice lacked conviction. "It'll pass." And if it doesn't? I had no answer for that. Sleep became elusive, my mind replaying conversations and interactions, searching for clues. Had her touch become perfunctory? Was her laughter less frequent? Did her eyes meet mine less often? Or was I manufacturing problems where none existed? Then came the business trip to Chicago. 3 days that extended to 5 with vague explanations about client complications. When I offered to fly out for the weekend to explore the city together afterward, her reasons for declining came too quickly, too rehearsed. "It'll be all work, babe. I'll be exhausted and terrible company. Let's plan something special when I get back instead." I tracked her Instagram posts that weekend. Photos of Lake Michigan at sunset, a trendy restaurant I didn't recognize, an art exhibit we'd once talked about visiting together. None included her. just artistic shots of places and moments I wasn't sharing. When I mentioned them casually upon her return, she seemed startled, then dismissive. "Just tourist stuff during lunch breaks," she said, unpacking clothes that somehow didn't seem wrinkled enough for the extended trip. One night, I woke at 3 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. I found her in the living room, the blue glow of her phone illuminating her face as she typed rapidly, a small smile playing on her lips. When she noticed me, she quickly locked the screen. "Couldn't sleep," she offered. "Just checking social media." I nodded and returned to bed, my chest tight with unspoken questions. For my birthday, she'd arranged dinner with friends at our favorite brewery. Thoughtful, but impersonal. No private celebration. No intimate moment that was just ours. Afterward, her gift to me sat unopened on our nightstand as she took an urgent work call that kept her on our balcony for nearly an hour, her voice too low for me to hear. The distance between us grew, measured not in physical space, but in the things left unsaid, the touches that became less frequent, the plans that remained unmade. We still moved through the choreography of a couple grocery shopping on Saturdays, occasional dinners with friends, obligatory family phone calls on Sundays, but the music had stopped, leaving us in awkward silence. Then came her sudden interest in changing her appearance, a dramatic haircut, new makeup techniques, workout clothes that seemed designed more for being seen than for actual exercise. When I complimented the changes, her smile never quite reached her eyes. "Just felt like refreshing my look," she'd say with a shrug that discouraged further questions. I found myself checking her location more often, disgusted with myself even as I did it. She was usually where she claimed to be: the office, the gym, a coffee shop, which only increased my self-loathing for doubting her. But sometimes there were discrepancies. The yoga studio when she'd mentioned shopping, an unfamiliar address when she'd texted about working late. I became hyper-aware of the moments her stories didn't quite align. The networking event she described in detail, yet the company website showed no record of. The teammate she'd supposedly helped through a crisis, who thanked her effusively on social media for something entirely different. Small inconsistencies that might mean nothing or everything. Our mutual friends started exchanging glances when we were together, their eyes carrying messages I couldn't quite decipher. Did they know something? Were they watching our slow-motion collapse with the awkward sympathy of witnesses to a car crash? My mother called one evening, her voice careful as she asked, "Is everything all right with you and Olivia? You sound different lately." "We're fine," I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. "Just busy with work and life. You know you can tell me anything," she said softly. "Even the hard things." I nearly broke then, nearly spilled all my suspicions and fears. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about her garden and my father's golf game. After hanging up, I found myself staring at Olivia's side of the closet, at the new dresses I'd never seen her wear, at the expensive heels that hadn't accompanied her to any event I'd attended. Who was she becoming? This woman I thought I knew. And why wasn't I included in the transformation? The most painful part wasn't the suspicion. It was how much I still loved her, despite it. How I still searched for her familiar shape in our bed each morning. How my heart still lifted when her name appeared on my phone. How I still planned my stories throughout the day to share with her over dinner. I was loving a ghost. The memory of what we had been, while the actual woman moved further away each day. By the time I saw that fateful text from Ryan, part of me had already known. The confirmation was just the period at the end of a sentence I'd been reading for months. After discovering that text from Ryan, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, a constant dull throb behind my ribs, but alongside it grew something else, a cold clarity that sharpened my thoughts to a dangerous edge. I became a strategist in my own tragedy, plotting the end of us with the same care I'd once used to plan our future. I told no one about the text message. Not Marcus, not my sister, not even my journal where I'd previously poured out my anxieties. This knowledge was mine alone, a bitter seed I would nurture until it bore the perfect fruit of revelation. Olivia's birthday was exactly 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to watch her deception unfold, to document the lies, to prepare myself for the moment when I would finally speak the truth we were both pretending didn't exist. 3 weeks to grieve privately before the public end. "Let's do something really special for your birthday," I suggested over breakfast, watching her face carefully. "You deserve to be celebrated." Her smile flickered with what might have been guilt before settling into enthusiasm. "That would be nice. Nothing too elaborate, though, okay? Trust me," I said, the irony of those words not lost on me. "I know exactly what would make you happy." And so began my meticulous planning. Not for the celebration she expected, but for the confrontation I needed. I reserved a private room at Eloise, the French restaurant she'd been dropping hints about for months. I contacted her parents, spinning a story about wanting to surprise their daughter, and they eagerly agreed to fly in from Chicago. I invited her closest friends, her work colleagues, though I was careful to exclude Ryan from the guest list, creating a guest list of 20 people who mattered most to her. I selected the menu with obsessive attention to detail, her favorite champagne, the appetizers she always gravitated toward, the chocolate soufflé she'd once described as life-changing. I arranged for flowers, for a photographer, for a small jazz trio to play quietly in the corner. Everything had to be perfect. The stage needed to be immaculate for the drama about to unfold. During those 3 weeks, I maintained the performance of the devoted boyfriend. I asked about her day with sincere interest, brought her coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, texted her sweet nothings during work hours. I was the best version of myself, giving her one last perfect glimpse of what she was throwing away. Meanwhile, I watched her with merciless attention. I noted how she stepped outside to take certain calls, how she claimed to be working late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, always the same days, how she would return home with her hair slightly disheveled and her makeup refreshed. I observed the secretive smiles at her phone, the way she withdrew emotionally even as I leaned in. Each observation was further confirmation, another brick in the wall of evidence I was building. One night, while she showered, I finally gave in to the urge that had been haunting me. I unlocked her phone. Her password was still my birthday, a detail that struck me as both poignant and insulting, and found the messages from Ryan. I didn't read them all. The glimpses I caught were enough, terms of endearment that should have been mine, plans made for times she'd told me she was working, photos that seared themselves into my mind, refusing to be unseen. I returned her phone exactly as I'd found it, then sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the framed photo of us on the nightstand, Olivia and me in Cabo last year, sun-kissed and laughing, her head thrown back in genuine joy as I kissed her cheek. Who were those people? Had we ever really been them? Or had I simply imagined the depth of what we shared? As her birthday approached, I withdrew money from my savings account, enough to pay for the entire evening without struggling. I bought a new suit, had my hair cut, even splurged on the expensive cologne she'd once said drove her wild. The irony wasn't lost on me, preparing for a breakup with the same attention I might have given to a proposal. I rehearsed what I would say, refining the words until they were perfect, devastating yet dignified, revealing everything while still allowing me to walk away with my pride intact. I practiced in front of the mirror, in the car during my commute, in the shower where my words mingled with the steam. I needed to get it right. No stumbling, no emotional breakdown, no room for her to twist things or make me doubt myself. The morning of her birthday, I woke before her, watching her sleep and wondering if she was dreaming of him. I made her favorite breakfast, avocado toast with poached eggs, and brought it to her in bed along with freshly brewed coffee and a single rose from the bouquet I'd ordered for the evening. "Happy birthday, beautiful," I said, kissing her forehead. The endearment felt hollow in my mouth, but my performance had to be flawless. Her smile was genuine as she sat up, hair tousled from sleep. "You remembered?" she said softly, as if surprised. "Of course I remembered," I replied, sitting beside her. "Today's all about you." She ate while scrolling through birthday messages on her phone, pausing slightly longer on certain ones. I wondered if Ryan had texted her already. What sweet lies he might have offered to the woman we were apparently sharing. "I have dinner planned for tonight," I told her. "Somewhere special. Wear that black dress I love." Her eyes lit up with pleasure and something else. "Anxiety? What time? I have a quick meeting late this afternoon, but I should be done by 6. A meeting. On her birthday. Both of us knew it was a lie, but I nodded as if I believed her. "Dinner's at 8. I'll pick you up at the office if you want." "No." The response came too quickly. "I mean, I'll meet you at home. We can go together." I squeezed her hand, wondering if she'd touch him with the same fingers later today. Perfect. Throughout the day, I sent her cheerful messages, playing the role of the besotted boyfriend counting down to our celebration. Each text was a small deception, a mirror of her own larger betrayal. The symmetry felt appropriate somehow. Her parents texted when their flight landed, excited to be part of the surprise. Friends confirmed their attendance. The restaurant called to verify final details. Everything was falling perfectly into place for the moment when I would dismantle our life together in front of everyone she cared about. Some might call it cruel, this public revelation I was planning. Perhaps it was. But after weeks of private pain, of smiling through lies and sleeping beside deception, I needed witnesses. I needed her to face what she'd done, not just to me, but to the narrative we'd created together, to the future we'd planned in front of others who'd invested in our story. As evening approached, I stood in our bathroom, adjusting my tie and studying my reflection. I looked good, better than I had in weeks. There was a clarity in my eyes that had been missing, a determination in the set of my jaw. Tonight, I would reclaim my dignity. Tonight, I would speak the truth she'd been avoiding. Tonight, I would end the performance we'd both been giving and walk away from the theater of our relationship. I texted her one last time. "Can't wait to celebrate with you tonight. You deserve all the happiness in the world." The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. She did deserve happiness. Just not with me, not anymore. And as for what I deserved, I was about to claim it for myself, one carefully chosen word at a time. The stage was set. The guests were arriving. All that remained was for the birthday girl to make her entrance, unaware that this celebration would become something else entirely. The moment when our carefully constructed life together would finally, spectacularly fall apart. I arrived at Eloise 30 minutes early, needing time to center myself before the performance began. The private dining room looked perfect. Soft lighting from crystal chandeliers, tables arranged in a U-shape around a small space for toasts and presentations, fresh flowers in elegant arrangements that complemented the room's deep blue walls. The jazz trio was setting up in the corner, testing their sound levels with quiet professionalism. Everything was exactly as I'd envisioned. Olivia's parents arrived next, her mother embracing me with genuine affection that made my chest tighten painfully. If only she knew what her daughter had done, how thoroughly she'd betrayed the future we'd planned. But that revelation wasn't mine to deliver to them, at least not directly. "She's going to be so surprised," her father said, clapping my shoulder. "You've outdone yourself, son." Son, the casual endearment hit me like a physical blow. In another universe, I would have been his son-in-law by now. We would have stood together at my wedding, shared cigars on the back porch at Thanksgiving, called each other family without hesitation. Now that future was gone, dismantled by text messages and secret rendezvous, by lies told with practiced ease. "You know how much I love surprising her," I replied, the words ashen on my tongue. Friends and colleagues began arriving in small groups, exclaiming over the elegance of the venue, the thoughtfulness of my planning. I played the gracious host, accepting compliments with modest smiles, directing people to the bar, making introductions where necessary. From the outside, I must have seemed the perfect boyfriend, attentive, generous, deeply in love. Only I knew the cold calculation behind every charming gesture. At 7:58, I received her text. "Just parking, can't wait to see you." The heart emoji seemed particularly cruel. I wondered if she'd sent the same one to Ryan earlier today, during her meeting that had actually been a birthday rendezvous. I wondered if she'd kissed him with the same lips that would soon kiss me in greeting. I wondered if she had any remorse at all for living this double life, or if the thrill of deception had become its own reward. At 8:05, she entered the restaurant. I watched from the doorway of our private room as the maitre d' took her coat, as she smoothed her dress, the black one I'd requested, the one that hugged her curves in a way that once made my breath catch. Her hair was different than when she'd left the apartment this morning. Freshly styled, with more volume, the way she wore it for special occasions. For him, I thought bitterly. She'd done herself up for him first, then refreshed herself for me. Seconds. I was being served seconds. I stepped forward to greet her in the main dining room, watching her eyes widen in appreciation as she took in my appearance. "You look incredible," she said, reaching up to straighten my tie in a gesture of casual intimacy that now felt like theft. "So do you," I replied, offering my arm. "Ready for your surprise?" Her smile was eager, excited. For a moment, I almost faltered. In that smile was the woman I'd fallen in love with, the Olivia before Ryan, before the lies. But then her phone buzzed in her clutch, and I saw her fingers twitch with the instinct to check it. Even now, on her birthday, at the beginning of what she believed would be a romantic evening, she was tethered to her other life. I led her toward the private room, pausing at the closed door. "Close your eyes," I instructed softly. She complied, her long lashes resting against her cheeks. Her lips curved in anticipation. I studied her face one last time. The face I'd woken up to for 3 years. The face I'd kissed and cherished and believed in. Then I opened the door. "Surprise!" The collective shout made her jump, her eyes flying open in genuine shock as she registered the room full of smiling faces. Her parents stepped forward first, her mother already teary-eyed, her father beaming with pride. Friends surrounded her, offering hugs and birthday wishes. Colleagues presented small gifts and cards. Through it all, I stood slightly apart, watching her reaction, noting how skillfully she hid her momentary panic at seeing so many witnesses gathered to celebrate her. Because that's what I saw in those first unguarded seconds. Not just surprise, but alarm, as if she was mentally calculating who was in the room, who might know what, how careful she needed to be. I saw her eyes scan the crowd, perhaps looking for Ryan, perhaps relieved not to find him there. "You did all this?" she asked me later, when the initial flurry of greetings had subsided and we were seated at the head table, her parents to her right, me to her left. "Of course," I said, lifting her hand to kiss it gently. "Only the best for you." Dinner progressed with orchestrated precision. Courses arrived and were cleared away. Wine flowed freely. Conversation hummed pleasantly around us. The jazz trio played softly in the background. Standards that we danced to in our kitchen. Songs that had once been ours, but now felt like artifacts from a museum of lost things. I watched her throughout the meal, noting the details that others might miss. How she checked her phone beneath the table when she thought no one was looking. How her smile never quite reached her eyes when I touched her. How she seemed to be performing happiness rather than experiencing it. A talent I'd become intimately familiar with myself these past few weeks. As dessert was being served, the chocolate soufflé she'd once declared perfect. Her closest friend, Emily, leaned over to whisper something that made Olivia tense momentarily before forcing a laugh. I wondered what had been said. A reference to Ryan, perhaps. Did Emily know? Were there others in this room who understood the charade we were playing? The time for toasts approached. Her father went first, raising his glass to speak about the daughter he'd always been proud of, the woman she'd become, the bright future ahead of her. If only he knew how that future had shifted, how different tomorrow would look from what we'd all imagined. Friends offered playful anecdotes and sincere well wishes. Colleagues praised her talent and dedication. Through it all, Olivia beamed, occasionally squeezing my hand as if we were sharing these beautiful moments together, rather than performing parallel monologues in a play about to go drastically off script. Then it was my turn. The moment I'd rehearsed countless times had finally arrived. I stood slowly, glass in hand, feeling 20 pairs of eyes turn expectantly toward me. This was traditionally when the boyfriend of 3 years might offer a loving tribute, perhaps even drop to one knee. I saw several women exchange excited glances, anticipating romance. The room quieted. The jazz trio paused between numbers. Even the servers stilled, sensing something important was about to happen. I looked down at Olivia, meeting her eyes, noting the trust there, undeserved trust that I was about to shatter. For a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was this too cruel? Too public? But then her phone buzzed again on the table beside her plate, and I watched her fingers twitch toward it instinctively. The doubt vanished, replaced by cold resolve. "I'd like to propose a toast," I began, my voice steady despite the thunder of my heart. "To Olivia, on her 29th birthday." Encouraging murmurs rippled through the room. I raised my glass higher, commanding their attention. 3 years ago, I met a woman who changed my life, who showed me what love could be, what trust meant, what it felt like to plan a future with absolute certainty. I paused, looking around the room, making eye contact with her parents, with our closest friends. I thought I knew her. I thought what we had was real. The atmosphere shifted subtly. Smiles faltered, glasses lowered slightly. Olivia's expression froze, her eyes widening as she began to sense the direction of my words. "But it seems I was wrong," I continued, my voice taking on an edge that silenced the room completely. "It seems 3 years, thousands of shared moments, and all the love I had to give wasn't enough. It seems there was room in her heart, and her bed for someone else entirely." Shocked gasps punctuated the silence. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father's expression darkened in confusion. Friends exchanged alarmed glances, suddenly unwilling participants in a moment too intimate, too raw for public consumption. I raised my glass one final time, looking directly into Olivia's stricken face. "So here's to Olivia and Ryan, since apparently what I've given you for 3 years isn't enough. May you both get exactly what you deserve." The room froze in collective shock. Olivia's face contorted in panic, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. What defense could there be against the simple truth? And then, as she fumbled for words, as tears welled in her eyes, as the room filled with the unbearable tension of public humiliation, something unexpected happened. I started laughing. Not cruelly, not maniacally, but with the sudden, liberating release of someone who finally sees the absurdity of their situation with perfect clarity. 3 years of my life, countless promises, a future meticulously planned. All of it built on a foundation of lies and self-deception. The laughter bubbled up from somewhere deep and honest inside me, cutting through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. In that moment of strange, inappropriate mirth, I felt the first real emotion I'd experienced in weeks. Not anger, not heartbreak, but a profound sense of freedom from illusion. As I placed my untouched champagne on the table and turned to leave, Olivia finally found her voice. "Wait," she called, half rising from her chair. "Please, I can explain." I paused at the doorway, looking back at the tableau I'd created. Her stricken face, the shocked expressions of our friends and family, the elegant celebration transformed into the scene of an emotional crime. "There's nothing to explain," I said quietly, my laughter subsiding into something calmer, clearer. "I'm not angry anymore, Olivia. I'm just finished." And with that, I walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind her tearful pleas and the shocked faces of our friends, feeling a strange weight lifting with each step I took. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is the first step to finding what you actually need. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside the restaurant, my unexpected laughter still echoing in my ears. For the first time in weeks, I took a full, deep breath that didn't feel like it was filtering through the weight of betrayal. Cars passed by, their headlights creating streaks of light against the darkness. Normal life continuing all around me while my world had just imploded. There was something strangely comforting about that continuity. I didn't go far. just to a bench across the street where I could see the restaurant entrance. Some part of me needed to witness the aftermath, to see the conclusion of the scene I'd set in motion. I wasn't waiting for Olivia. I meant what I'd said about being finished. But I needed this moment of transition, this pause between what had been and what would come next. Sure enough, within minutes, people began spilling out of Eloise. Friends in small, huddled groups, speaking in low voices, glancing around as if expecting to find me lurking nearby. Her colleagues looking uncomfortable, making quick exits to their cars. Her mother in tears, her father's arm protectively around her shoulders as he helped her into a taxi. The carefully orchestrated birthday celebration dispersing like mercury scattered across the floor, impossible to gather back together. Finally, Olivia emerged, her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her perfect appearance now as disheveled as our relationship. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, searching the street. Perhaps for me, perhaps for a way to salvage the wreckage of the evening. When she pulled out her phone, I knew exactly who she was calling. Even now, in the smoking ruins of our relationship, she was reaching for him. The realization didn't hurt as much as I expected. Instead, it confirmed the rightness of my decision. I watched her climb into an Uber, watched the taillights disappear around the corner, and felt something shift inside me. The final piece of us breaking free, drifting away on the night breeze. I didn't follow. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to hear. Instead, I walked, directionless at first, then with growing purpose as I traced a path through the city that had witnessed our love story and would now witness its end. The next week passed in a blur of practical concerns. Olivia tried calling repeatedly the first night, her voicemails evolving from tearful explanations to angry accusations to bargaining pleas. I listened to each one once, then deleted them. When she finally stopped calling, the silence felt like a confirmation. I stayed with Marcus for a few days while she moved her things out of our apartment. He didn't ask questions, just offered his spare room and enough whiskey to numb the edges of the pain. I was grateful for the silence, for the space to process what had happened, and what would come next. "You know what's weird?" I said to him one night as we sat on his balcony, watching the city lights blink like earthbound stars. "I'm not angry anymore. I thought I would be, but I'm just empty, like I'm a house that's been cleared out, waiting for new furniture." He nodded slowly. "The anger will probably come back in waves. So will the sadness. But the emptiness is good. It means you're ready to refill that space with something better." When I finally returned to my apartment, the absence of her things created strange negative spaces. The missing books from the shelves, the empty hangers in the closet, the bare nightstand where her reading glasses used to sit. Yet somehow the apartment felt fuller, without the weight of deception that had filled it for months. Her parents called once. I almost didn't answer, but something in me needed closure with them too. "We don't understand what happened," her mother said, her voice fragile with confusion. "Olivia won't explain properly." "I'm sorry you were caught in the middle," I replied, meaning it. "You didn't deserve that. Neither did I." Was she really having an affair? Her father's voice now, gruff with emotion. "Yes, for months." The simple truth, stated without drama. The silence that followed told me they believed me. That mattered somehow. That they knew their daughter had been the architect of this collapse, not me. "We always thought of you as a son," her mother finally said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." After we hung up, I sat with their grief alongside my own, mourning not just what I'd lost, but what they had lost too. Their trust in their daughter, their vision of her character, perhaps even their imagined future grandchildren. Friends divided themselves without needing direction, some calling to check on me, others maintaining a telling silence that aligned them with Olivia. Emily, her closest friend, surprised me by showing up at my door 2 weeks after the birthday dinner. "I knew," she confessed, eyes downcast as she sat awkwardly on the edge of my couch. "Not everything, but enough. I should have told you." I studied her. This woman who had witnessed our relationship from the beginning, who had seen the cracks forming before I did. "Why didn't you—" "I thought it would pass. I thought she would come to her senses." She looked up then, her eyes pleading for understanding. "She was my friend first. I got caught in the middle." I nodded slowly. "We all make our choices. I don't blame you for yours." After she left, I realized I meant it. The anger I'd expected to consume me after the initial shock had mellowed into something more nuanced. A sadness for all that had been lost, yes, but also a growing understanding that Olivia's betrayal had revealed more about her character than about my worth. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into projects, stayed late, volunteered for challenges that once would have intimidated me. Colleagues noticed the change, this new focus, this intensity. My boss called me into his office one afternoon. "Whatever's driving you, I appreciate the results," he said. "But are you okay? You seem different." I considered the question seriously. "I'm becoming different," I finally answered. "I think that's okay." He nodded, seeming to understand more than I'd said. "Just remember to breathe occasionally." 3 months after the birthday dinner, I ran into Ryan at a coffee shop downtown. I recognized him immediately from the company photos on Olivia's workplace website. Tall, conventionally handsome, with an easy confidence that probably opened many doors in his life, including the door to my relationship. Our eyes met across the crowded space, and I saw the moment of recognition flash across his face, followed quickly by discomfort. I could have walked away. I could have ignored him. Instead, I approached his table, some final piece of the puzzle needing to fall into place. "You must be Ryan," I said simply, extending my hand. He hesitated before taking it, confusion evident in his expression. "And you're the boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend now, thanks to you." He winced, his gaze dropping to his coffee cup. "Look, man, I didn't know about you at first. By the time I found out, we were already—" "Already what? In love?" The word tasted bitter on my tongue. He shook his head slowly. "I don't know what we were. What we are. It's complicated." I almost laughed at the cliché. "Let me uncomplicate it for you. She lied to me for months. She'll lie to you too. Maybe she already has." I didn't wait for his response. Didn't need to see the doubt creep into his eyes. I'd said what I needed to say, not out of vengeance, but from a genuine place of warning. Whatever happened between them now wasn't my concern. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I finally opened the box I'd been avoiding. The one containing photos, ticket stubs, small mementos from our 3 years together. I spread them across the floor, examining each one carefully, trying to determine which memories were real and which had been performances on her part. Had she loved me during that trip to Maine, her face glowing in the light of a beach bonfire? Had she meant it when she wrote, "Forever yours," in that birthday card from our first year? Had any of it been genuine? Or had I merely been a placeholder, a comfortable routine until something more exciting came along? In the end, I realized it didn't matter. Whether she had loved me once and stopped, or never loved me properly at all, the result was the same. We were over. The future I had planned with such certainty had evaporated, leaving me in a present I hadn't anticipated and couldn't have prepared for. I gathered the photos back into the box, but didn't close it yet. Instead, I wrote a letter. Not to send, just to release the final thoughts that had been circling my mind. "Olivia, I keep thinking about laughter. How strange it was that in the moment our world fell apart, I found myself laughing. Not from joy, but from the absurd realization that I'd been fighting for someone who didn't exist. The Olivia I loved, the one I thought I knew, was a creation of my own hope and trust, not the woman who could systematically deceive me while looking into my eyes each night. I don't write this from anger. The anger has largely faded, leaving something clearer in its wake. I write this to say goodbye to the future we planned, to the children we named during lazy Sunday mornings, to the house by the lake we designed in detailed conversations. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for when you turned to him. I hope it was worth the cost, not just to me, but to yourself, to the person you might have been if you'd chosen honesty over deception. Part of loving someone is believing the best of them. I did that until I couldn't anymore. I hope someday you'll learn to do the same, for yourself and for whoever comes after me. I folded the letter and placed it in the box with the photos, then closed the lid firmly. Tomorrow I would store it in the back of my closet, not to be revisited regularly, but kept as a record of a chapter now complete. 6 months after the birthday dinner, Marcus convinced me to join him for a weekend trip to his family's cabin upstate. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves transforming the landscape into a canvas of red and gold. We hiked during the day and built fires at night, talking about everything and nothing as old friends do. On our last evening, sitting by the lake with a beer in hand, I realized something important. I had gone the entire weekend without thinking about Olivia. Not once had her ghost intruded on my thoughts. Not once had I wondered what she was doing or who she was with. The absence of that familiar ache was startling in its completeness. "You're smiling," Marcus observed, interrupting my realization. "What's funny?" I considered the question, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of amber and rose. "Not funny," I replied. "Just finished. Really finished this time." He nodded, understanding without needing elaboration. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness slowly claimed the landscape, transforming reflection into shadow, known into unknown. Later that night, unable to sleep, I stepped onto the cabin's porch and looked up at the vast expanse of stars. So many more visible here than in the city. I thought about cosmic time, about how insignificant my heartbreak was in the grand scheme of the universe. Somehow, that thought wasn't depressing but comforting. A reminder that pain is temporary, that all states of being eventually transform into something else. The laughter that had erupted from me in that restaurant months ago suddenly made perfect sense. It hadn't been cruel or hysterical or even inappropriate. It had been the sound of recognition, of seeing clearly for the first time the absurdity of clinging to illusions, of fighting for someone who existed only in my hopes. I had lost the future I'd planned so carefully, but standing under those stars, breathing in the scent of pine and wood smoke, I understood that what I'd gained was potentially far more valuable: the freedom to build something authentic, the wisdom to recognize deception, and the courage to walk away from what no longer served me. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is the first step to finding what you actually need. As I turned to go back inside, I felt something shift within me. Not the closing of a wound, exactly, but the opening of a door I hadn't known was there. Whatever lay beyond it would be uncertain, unplanned, unpromised, and for the first time in months, I found myself looking forward to that uncertainty with something that felt remarkably like hope.